You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Every weeknight, it's Buzz After Dark.
You like that?
Tonight, with Eric Steele.
Hang out with me Monday through Friday from 7 to midnight for the Buzz After Dark. It's kind of like the Titanic, except instead of 3 hours to sink, it takes 5 hours.
Freaks come out at night, that's for sure. The Buzz After Dark. After Dark.
All night long.
Awesome tunes, clothing optional.
Hope you enjoyed the ride.
Weeknight 7 to midnight on 102.9 The Buzz. Nashville's Rock Station.
Hello and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, the very first episode of the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Nesbit. This is going to be the place to get all the dirt, all the history, the complete Night Demon story. And for the first episode, I figured I'd tell you a bit about myself, and what better way than the song that got me into Night Demon, Maiden Hell. Maiden Hell is a tribute song to the band Iron Maiden. So before I get going, I just want to say most episodes of this podcast won't be so Iron Maiden centric, but Iron Maiden and the song Maiden Hell is a really big part of how I discovered Night Demon and also how this Night Demon podcast came to be. So for this episode, there is going to be a lot of Iron Maiden talk, which I hope you don't have a problem with. And if you do, there's something wrong with you, because Iron Maiden's awesome. I'll tell you a quick version of how I got hooked on Night Demon. Before this podcast, I had another podcast called Talking Maiden, the Podcast of the Beast, and it ran from 2017 to 2020. And me and my co-host Josh, we talked about every single Maiden song, every album. It kind of started off kind of rough, but we kind of got our shit together, started picking up an audience, and it wasn't very long before we got like a ton of listener feedback. It just started pouring in. In one episode, I mentioned that I was having a hard time finding modern metal bands that kind of, that really do it for me the way Iron Maiden does. And the next week, I got an email from a listener. Her name was River, and she was from Missouri. And I actually have her email right here and says, "Hey, longtime listener and first-time messenger. I'd figured I'd toss a band recommendation your way for newer metal, especially for bands that play with a more traditional vibe. The one I'd recommend is Night Demon, who play with a very new wave of British heavy metal flavored style. They even have a tribute song called Maiden Hell, and an all-around nice production and very tight songwriting." So me and my co-host Josh, we both listened to the song Maiden Hell that she recommended, and we're totally blown away. And we talked about it a bit on an episode of the podcast, and we played a clip, because it was very Maiden related. And this is the actual clip that we played. So we played a clip, 20 seconds, short and sweet, and we sent River a t-shirt and some stickers, said thanks for recommending this band. And something happened in the weeks after we played that clip on our podcast. We started getting emails from listeners thanking us for introducing them to Night Demon. A few listeners emailed us basically saying, "You have to see Night Demon live. They're amazing." A couple of people saying Night Demon's their favorite band. They're the best band on the go. And I could tell there was something about this band. There was a buzz about them with our listener base that we didn't get with any other band that we mentioned or any other clips we played. Our listeners were pretty hardcore Iron Maiden fans, and it seemed like people that loved Maiden just loved Night Demon, and they were passionate enough to actually email us about them. So out of the 40-something bands that listeners sent in recommending to us, a couple of them I really liked, but there was one that I really loved, and that band was Night Demon. And it wasn't just me, my co-host Josh. Josh likes what he likes, and it's really hard to get him into a new band. I got him into Iron Maiden 15 years ago or so. I still haven't been able to get him into Priest or Sabbath. Not that he doesn't like it, he's just not the type of person to really invest time to get to know a band. But he immediately fell in love with this latest Night Demon album. I was very surprised that he latched onto them so strongly and so quickly. There's something about Night Demon that hooked both of us right away. Here's Josh, my co-host on the Talking Maiden podcast.
Yeah, when I first heard Night Demon, I have to say, really unique sound and just an amazing energy. For me, they channel the spirit of Maiden. I love them. They're amazing. I enjoyed seeing them live. For me, they're carrying the torch of nu metal. They're exciting, and I think people should be watching their journey.
One thing you hear people talk about a lot when they're talking about the early Iron Maiden Paul Di'Anno years is they talk about how it has this punk vibe to it. And I always kind of wrote that off as fans. They see the leather jacket, they see Paul Di'Anno on stage. He kind of looks like a punk. And, basically Iron Maiden doesn't sound punk at all. But there is sort of a punk energy to that early Iron Maiden. It's not a sonic thing. It's more of a feeling and a vibe. And Night Demon kind of has that vibe too. It's full on metal, but there's this punk energy and attitude and a rawness to it. Kind of like how the Iron Maiden album Killers. It has this punk energy and feeling to it, even though it doesn't sound punk. So Night Demon takes that, and then it's just great hooks, melodies, and there's this intensity to their playing that I love. And they definitely have that kind of new wave of British heavy metal feel to their music, but there's a lot more to it. There's kind of there's a straight up 70s rock guitar vibe to it, especially in some of the later stuff. And it's melodies, hooks, mixed with this kind of Stooges MC5 urgency and rawness, and just performed with super tight musicianship. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining this. Just listen to Night Demon. I think you'll know what I mean. Basically, it's all the elements of my favorite music wrapped up in this tight, evil package. So that's how I discovered Night Demon. And then as far as how the podcast came to be, that's also sort of an interesting story. Don't worry, I'll keep this short, and then we can get on to the music. So we play this clip on the podcast. Night Demon becomes one of me and Josh's favorite bands, and we decided to reach out to the band, see if they want to come on the podcast. They wrote a song about Iron Maiden. We have an Iron Maiden podcast. We thought it'd be fun. So Jarvis, the singer, bass player for Night Demon, comes on our podcast. We talk about Maiden, we talk about the Maiden Hell song, and shoot the shit about Maiden for about an hour. And afterwards, we kept in touch. And he came on our podcast a few times over the years. In fact, he comes on one of our last episodes. And after we're done recording, we're just talking about the end of our podcast and, shooting the shit, talking about how our podcast is ending. And I kind of pitched him the idea of doing a Night Demon podcast. And Jarvis thought it was a very cool idea. One of the things about doing a podcast about a band is how hard and frustrating it is to get information and histories and stories behind songs. Basically, for my old podcast, every episode was hours and hours of looking through books and Googling old magazine interviews just to find a scrap of information or an unknown fact about the band. So I'm extremely excited about doing this Night Demon podcast. My Maiden podcast is over, and now I have this opportunity to do a podcast on another favorite band of mine. But this time I have full access to the band, all the tracks, access to demos, alternate takes and recordings of the tracks, stories behind every song, the history of the band, interviews with anyone connected to Night Demon, the people that did the cover art, former members, and great quality bootlegs straight from the band, straight from the source. It's the music podcast I always wanted to be able to do. And I'm basically going to try to give you guys what I always wanted in a music podcast. Rare facts, behind the scenes stories, total full access, lots of unique content you can't get anywhere else. A totally full access podcast that tells the entire story of the band in extreme detail. It's exciting to be a Night Demon fan right now. As Night Demon released these newest singles, I feel like the band are kind of making a transition into like another level of songwriting and musicianship. Like if these new singles are leading up to another full album release, it's going to be a huge album that takes them to a new level. That's why it's so exciting to be a Night Demon fan right now. You can see they're on the verge of breaking through to an even bigger level than they already are. And it's exciting to be a fan of a band when they're at that stage. To keep with the Maiden theme, I think they're kind of about to break through to their Number of the Beast phase. Anyway, that's enough about me. I just figured I'd let you know a bit about me before we dive into the Night Demon content. So now we're going to do what I love to do, which is to deep dive into the songs. So the song that introduced me to Night Demon, Maiden Hell. So, by way of a very brief history, Night Demon were formed in Ventura, California, May 2011. There's been a few lineup changes in the early days before they settled on this current classic lineup. In future episodes, we will get in detail into these past members and lineup changes. But for now, Night Demon are Jarvis Leatherby on lead vocals and bass guitar, Dusty Squires on drums and backing vocals, and Armand John Anthony, all the guitars and backing vocals too. This song, Maiden Hell, was actually written by Night Demon when their original guitar player Brent Woodward was in the band. Here's what Armand has to say about the writing of this song.
That was one of the riffs that was pretty much, well, most of the song was pretty written when I came into the band. When I joined the band, the guys had some recordings of the three of them with Brent playing in the room, in the rehearsal room, just recording some riffs and this and that.
So here from the Night Demon archives, this is one of the first recorded versions of the song that would go on to become Maiden Hell. Now at the time it had the working title of No Good, and it was recorded on a Zoom 2-track recorder. So you can see the riffs, the song, on its way to being written but far from complete. And you probably noticed no guitar solo. Here's Armand.
The only things that were missing were little solo fills and the main solo. I guess that was the thing that Brent would do. He would, instead of trying to come up with something on the spot, he would just leave those parts empty. So for me, that was great because I was like, okay, well, there's nothing there to influence me on what I'm going to play or what my solo should be. So I had completely creative control over all the lead stuff on all of the songs on that album that were kind of written already.
Hey guys, Jarvis jumping in here. I want to tell you about Shadow Kingdom Records. Shadow Kingdom was the first domestic label to release Night Demon on CD. They put out the EP in 2013, and they also released the vinyl version of Live Darkness. Listen, you guys need to get your ass to the Shadow Kingdom Records store, okay? Right now, they're offering 10% off for all Night Demon Heavy Metal podcast listeners. Just go to the website, put in the code NIGHTDEMON10. That's Night Demon 10, all capital letters, Night Demon 10. No spaces. Put that promo code in upon checkout to get 10% off. Right now, guys, they have the Bloodstar 7-inch, which has sold over 1,500 copies, and these guys cannot hold on to it. So this next pressing, you want to get that before it goes out, okay? Also, it's SKR Compilation Volume 1. Guys, this is free on Bandcamp. They're giving it away for free. So not only are you going to go to shadowkingdomrecords.com and put in the code, all capital letters, no spaces, Night Demon 10 upon checkout, you're also going to go to their Bandcamp site and get this compilation for free. You're going to hear tons of fantastic fucking heavy metal. If you love us, you're going to love this label. Check it out, shadowkingdomrecords.com. Put in the promo code NIGHTDEMON10 and receive 10% off of your entire order. Do it.
One thing that's sort of interesting about the main riff in this song is it has a very classic metal influence.
I remember Brent came up with the riff. It was kind of like more of like a Richie Blackmore Rainbow kind of feel, I think is what he was going for. And then it just kind of came out demonized as we ran it through the Night Demon machine.
It was cool. I liked the riff right away. It kind of gave me like a fucking Richie Blackmore kind of Deep Purple or Rainbow kind of vibe. Yeah, not so much purple, but Rainbow.
When I talked to the guys in the band about this riff, the Rainbow influence kept popping up again and again. In fact, the first demo they did with Armand in the band actually had the working title of Rainbow.
Here's an early demo of Maiden Hell. This is right when Armand joined the band. So this must have been the first demo we probably ever did with him. It's funny that Armand had found this in his archives here of recordings, but it's just titled here Rainbow. So definitely you can tell where when Brent wrote the main parts of that riff that Brent had definitely been influenced by Rainbow. If when Armand joins the band, we're calling the song, that's the working title is Rainbow. But that's great. Who better to take influence from than one of the greatest hard rock bands of all time, and not to mention a band that I'm sure Maiden looked up to. At least had much respect for Blackmore and of course Ronnie Dio.
So here's that demo that Jarvis was just talking about. It had the working title of Rainbow. Now remember, there's still no lyrics. The song is still not about Iron Maiden, but you can hear it taking form, and especially pay attention to Armand's guitar solo. I think it's really cool. So that was the Rainbow demo. If you want to hear all these demos instead of just these clips, go to nightdemon.net/subscriber. But back to this demo and the guitar solo. I think that solo is very cool, and you can really hear what a difference Armand makes to the sound of the band after he joins. Here's Jarvis talking a little about the guitar solo in that demo.
Another really cool thing about the solo that Armand does on this demo, it's pretty much right on. So like I had mentioned before, that he had worked out the solo. This is probably one of the first ones that he had worked out when he joined the band. But it's got that cool kind of like a Middle Eastern flair to it, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the scale, but what he does at the end is really cool. I really like that little lick he does, and listening back to it now, I kind of wish it was on the record that way. I never really realized this until I kind of heard it again years later, but maybe he'll start doing it live.
It is a pretty cool sounding solo. Here's another version of that solo from another rough instrumental demo. This is just the solo, but it does have some really cool scales in there. So at this point, you have this kick-ass metal song. It's starting to get fleshed out, but still no lyrics. Here's Dusty talking about how the song came to be about Iron Maiden.
When we wrote the music for that track, we didn't really have Iron Maiden in mind. I remember I took a ride in Jarvis's car, and he's like, I got a really cool idea for this track. And he's like, I'm just going to make it about Iron Maiden. I'm thinking about calling it Maiden Hell. And I thought it was a really great idea, and I knew that he'd be able to put, his spin on what he wanted to put across, get across, as if, Iron Maiden would hear the song, what would they think about it if they were to hear it? So I think that's what makes that song pretty unique, and just the fact that we were able to go out there and pay homage to a band that influences us every day. Can't really go wrong with that.
So the guys have this idea to make a song about Iron Maiden, but, the lyrics, it doesn't come easy.
Lyrically, I knew I wanted to write a tribute to Maiden somehow, in some form. My original drafts were pretty silly and elementary, I guess you could say. Just kind of, I can't really remember what it was now, but just to get something down on paper, kind of like, oh, Maiden, you're the greatest band, you're the coolest. Some ridiculous stuff like this. But I wasn't really getting anywhere with that kind of direct praise to them. So I decided to pull out all of my Maiden LPs to try and get some inspiration just directly from them. And so I just flipped to the back covers of all of them. I rarely look at them. They're awesome, but I'm just so used to looking at the front covers of all these records. And so through the back covers, I had just realized that the song titles tell the story. The song titles themselves can tell the story of Iron Maiden. I tried to go in chronological order as best I could to tell that story because I thought that was appropriate. You start from the first record and then you go to current day. But even the first line, I just love it.
Do you remember tomorrow today?
So do you remember the song, Remember Tomorrow Today? So you're already in that nostalgic feel right away, right when the song kicks in.
Do you remember tomorrow today? We were just kids running free.
Do you remember tomorrow today? We were just kids running free. I mean, just when I was writing that, I just had the thoughts of just being in my first band and growing up with my best friends. I mean, I still remember, like yesterday, my best friends, Doug Clark and Mike Mall, Ron Baldwin. We just, we were playing in a band together, and we loved Iron Maiden, and we were just hanging out and getting drunk and smoking weed and trying to play heavy metal, and just live teenage life. And Iron Maiden was there to get us through.
Back in the days when Charlotte was a whore, she unleashed the right child in me.
Then even the second line, back in the days when Charlotte was a whore, she unleashed the Wrathchild in me. And basically, I mean, that's just a throwback to Charlotte the Harlot. And, you know, I mean, Maiden even did continue that story with 22 Acacia Avenue later on. But I think the whole time, really, they wanted, I mean, who knows? They may have wanted to use a word like whore or something, but, you know, EMI back then, 1980, wasn't going to put anything out like that. That was still pre-satanic panic days, but there was still a very heavy conservative feel over England at the time. So I hope we got to get that message across for them. The vocals were definitely double-tracked. I do remember double-tracking these vocals. I just like to do that sometimes. It thickens up the song. But especially on this one, it was good. It's a really fast-moving song, so I wanted to really get the articulation of the words in there.
Drifter in a strange world, murdering in the room morgue. Made in hell, made in hell. We were made in hell, made in hell, made in hell.
I do regret, though, singing the words running free. When I say free, I guess that's how Paul Di'Anno sang it. He said running free. But I kind of wanted to sing, like, it was my vocal style. I wanted to do like a running fray. You can kind of do the same thing, but pull a little bit of a Klaus Meine Scorpions kind of vibe. Running fray instead of running free. But hey, you know, there you go.
I always thought there was a cool vocal sound on this whole album, and there's a reason for it. Here's Armand. Armand's the guitar player, but he also helped get the sound of the vocals for this whole album.
I have a old Echo unit called a Roland. It's made by Roland, and it's called a Space Echo, and it uses tape that you would find in like a cassette to create echoes. It's a little hard to explain. I'm not super techie here, but what it basically does is it records you while you sing, and then it plays it back on a head that there's multiple heads in the unit, and the ones that are further away give you more of a delay, you know? So we like to use that kind of slap back echo thing. So we sent that. I actually brought that down and gave it to Josh, who mixed the record, and said, here, plug this thing in, put it on all the vocals. So that's one thing that's pretty consistent through the record. As far as the vocal sound.
So there's some cool technical gear details. As an Iron Maiden fan, and I am a fan of the Blaze Bayley era, I did notice there was no Blaze Bayley era Iron Maiden song titles used in the lyrics.
One thing that I did want to clarify in the third verse of the song, you know, there are no song titles from the Blaze Bayley era in Maiden Hell. So unfortunately, there just was not enough room. It's a pretty short song, and there was a lot that I really did want to cram in there. And so I did give a nod to Blaze in the third verse. There is the line that says, came out of a blaze to find the brave new world.
Came out of a blaze to find the brave new world. The final frontier looks so far.
So that was not a slant to Blaze, but as you have it, the listener will always make up their own mind when reading lyrics.
So the instrumental tracks are done. They were previously recorded by Roger Camaro at Bright Mountain Studios in Keene, California. So they have the instrumental tracks done for Maiden Hell. Then they go to the captain's quarters, which is Armand's studio, to lay down the vocals.
Mainly because we recorded the record in just a few days and then basically had to hit the road. And that was, I was at the band for, I don't know, a few months at that point. I think I did one tour. We did a tour, then we came back, basically had to learn the songs, record them, and then hit the road. And so I don't think we started recording the vocals until like 2 or 3 months after we had recorded all the music. So there was plenty of time to just sit and listen to the instrumental tracks while we're on the road. And there's a lot of time for Jarvis to write the lyrics and everything. So then once we got back and we just jumped into it, did them all here, and then we sent everything over to Josh to mix.
So before we deep dive and dig into this track, there's something else about this song that I want to mention, and it has to do with Iron Maiden again. So there's a movie called The Night of the Beast. It's in post-production right now. It's a Colombian movie. It's about two teenagers heading out to an Iron Maiden show in Colombia, and they get their tickets stolen. As an Iron Maiden fan, I'm pretty pumped about this. I think it's going to be great. The movie features a bunch of Iron Maiden tunes, The Trooper, Aces High. It also features this song, Maiden Hell by Night Demon. So that's pretty cool. There's a Maiden movie coming out, and it has a song in it by Night Demon. It's in post-production right now. When a release date is announced, I'll be sure to fill you in on all the details, and I'll get into a lot more details about it. It's in Spanish with English subtitles, but the trailer looks awesome. I think it's going to be a really cool, really funny movie. And featuring the music of Iron Maiden and Night Demon, I mean, you can't go wrong.
Maiden. ¿Por Maiden?
Ese es el plan.
El mejor concierto de nuestra vida.
Tiraba mis manos y yo me transformaba en un lobo. Ahí me desplomé y empezaba a sentir como la tierra respiraba.
¿No tiene boleta?
¿Qué estarán tocando?
One thing about this song that I'm going to bring up now, and I kind of hesitate to bring it up because it's one of those weird things where once you hear it, you can't unhear it. But I think it's important to mention. I'll just let Jarvis explain this.
One thing that always bothered me about the original master on Darkness Remains is that you can hear a dip in the volume right after the intro comes in, after the first hit. It dips in volume as the song comes in for, 6 to 8 seconds, something like that. And then it just comes back in. You can really notice it on headphones. I remember Dusty noticed it, and he was really bothered by it. And I tried to pretend it wasn't there just because I couldn't believe that we had put that record out and had that done. I was living in total denial. But at the end of the day, I couldn't ignore that it was there. And the whole reason for that happening is that a friend of ours, John Wooten from the band Widow, he had been working at this studio, Bunker Sound, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, owned by this guy, Stephen Raitt. Really, really cool guy. Amazing studio. A lot of great outboard gear. And so he's the guy who mastered the record. And when we mastered the album, we recorded it digitally. So when we mastered it, we ran it through 2-inch tape. And I think maybe something might have happened with the electricity or the power or whatever, but something during the mastering process caused the tape machine to flutter and the levels dropped there. So there you have it. Honest mistake. I mean, really, as the band, we are the final say. So I don't blame Steven for that. It's something that we should have caught. But we were in South America. We were on tour. We were late as usual. These deadlines just creep up, and we're trying to listen to mixes on headphones, and we're taking 2 flights a day. We were down there in some pretty bad conditions. I mean, we had a great time, but there was just certain situations, and we were doing the best we could.
So I can notice that now in headphones. I never really did before. That's the thing about this podcast. It's the complete Night Demon story. You're going to get the whole story, warts and all.
What is up, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners? This is your resident motor mouth, Jarvis Leatherby, telling you about something very, very special here. The Decibel Hall of Fame Anthology, Volume 3. This is a book, guys. That's right. We all know Decibel Magazine as the #1 metal magazine in North America for many years running. But you know what? They also have a fucking killer book series, okay? I want to tell you about this. The Decibel Hall of Fame Anthology, Volume 3. This limited edition hardcover includes 25 Hall of Fame stories from Decibel's revered monthly series of artist interviews on the making of their classic extreme music albums. Featured in this book are stories behind classic albums such as Stained Class by Judas Priest, apocalyptic raids from our good buddy Tom Warrior's Hellhammer, Pleasure to Kill from Teutonic German terror creator, Court in the Act from the legendary new wave of British heavy metal gods Satan, and of course, Abigail from the legendary King Diamond. And last but not least, Night Demon's personal favorite, Heartwork, from the only other band from Liverpool, Carcass. So guys, please head on over right now to store.decibelmagazine.com and grab a copy to read the definite stories of heavy metal's definitive albums. Put in the promo code Night Demon upon checkout to receive 10% off. That's Night Demon, one word, all capital letters. Get your 10%, store.decibelmagazine.com. While you're there, guys, go ahead and grab a subscription of the Mag 2. They've got a great vinyl flexi series. Do yourselves a favor here. Get on the level. Store.decibelmagazine.com. Promo code Night Demon. See ya.
So that's kind of the story behind the song. Now I want to dig deep into the song. It's a song that got me into Night Demon, and there's a lot in the song that I'd like to point out. So one of the things I love about this song is the guitar solo. We talked about the early version of the solo from the Rainbow demo. Now we're going to get into the solo from the album version.
That's actually one of my favorite solos on the record because it just kind of rips, and then I do this little like kind of melodic Egyptian sounding scale part in the middle of the solo, which is something that always perks my ear because I grew up with my dad playing Greek and Italian and Turkish music with a lot of those Middle Eastern scales, so I always heard that stuff growing up, and I've always just had a liking to that naturally. Those kind of sounds, you know, those kind of note intervals and all that stuff. So whenever I can, I try to sneak that shit in there.
Very cool solo. I love hearing, you know, the behind the scenes of how he came up with, you know, certain guitar solos. Aside from the solo, just the riffs, you know, it's such a crunchy, thick sounding riff, and those little guitar fills that are all over this song really kick ass. I asked Armand about the guitar tones and sound on this song. Here's what he said.
No real effects, kind of. We just kept it pretty dry, man. It's 2 guitar tracks doubled. I basically doubled everything that I played. One left side, one right side. So this performance is pretty spot on. There's a couple little, if you really listen to it, you can hear some little differences between some of the little lead fills, but we decided to leave those in there as kind of like a ode to like Tony Iommi. There's a lot of the shit on the early Sabbath records that he would double solos, and you know, they weren't always exactly the same, or even sometimes they were completely different, like the 2 solos going at the same time. I love that. So we were kind of like, yeah, let's just leave those little things ear candy, because then, you know, if you double it, you know, you can double it, make it really tight, and it can sound like one guitar, but then what's the point of doing that? I like to be able to hear the little differences between the 2 parts.
I love that little ending riff. Super cool. So as far as sounds on this song, we talked about the solo and the riffs. The drumming on this song, the drums sound great on this whole album. Very intense, very cool. Really pushes the song along. I asked Dusty about the drum sounds on the song, and here's what he had to say.
When it comes to the Maiden Hell track, drums, I ended up playing all Ludwig drums on that song. I used a 14x8 Ludwig Coliseum snare, and then I used a classic 70s Ludwig maple kit. 26-inch bass drum, 18-inch floor tom, 14-inch rack tom, just all big drums, big sizes. Tuned them down really fat and low just to get the attack and the punch and the body. And I think in that track, you know, that song is more of a balls out, just in your face, up-tempo jammer. I'm really just kind of keeping it straight with the kick drum. And it's very self-explanatory when it comes to the drum parts. I'm doing a couple fills here and there that kind of follow the riff a bit, but overall, I'm just kind of keeping the tempo going, especially in the solo section. I kind of pick up the tempo a bit because we don't record to a click track or anything. So when I'm naturally feeling it, and I remember at the time, you know, just kind of like looking at Jarvis, and he was like just hitting the bass pretty hard, and we were like going for it, you know. And it was before Armand actually had a solo put down for the song, and I remember just the energy of how the part was going. I was like, oh yeah, we're cruising. So I knew that it was going to be a really cool song.
Dusty mentions the bass playing being intense in the song. When you isolate the bass line during the guitar solo, you can really hear that intensity. He has a very unique style, and he does a few things that I really love on this track. The bass lines that he comes up with are very interesting, and here's a really good example of that. I think where Night Demon is a three-piece band, those bass lines that Jarvis comes up with, they really help to flesh out the sound of the band. Hey guys, Nesbit here. If you'd like to support Night Demon and this podcast, the best way to do it is to become a Night Demon subscriber. Not only will you be doing your part to support a true heavy metal band out there really living it, you'll also gain access to a ton of extras. Bonus audio content, a subscriber-only merch store with rare items from the band's archives. You can stream never-before-heard demos and unearthed live concerts from the live vaults. Communicate with the other Night Demon diehards on an exclusive subscriber forum, and gain early access to all press releases, album pre-orders, new merchandise, and a ton more. And another thing that I think is pretty cool is Night Demon will be donating 10% of every subscription fee to the Metal Cares Foundation, which is a charitable fund the band started in 2014 to aid those in our metal community. So head over to nightdemon.net/subscriber and join us as we make heavy metal history together as one. And on a side note, I'll personally think you're a grade A badass. So I was just talking about Night Demon being a trio or a three-piece band. And even though they don't have like the 2 or 3 now guitarists like Maiden does, they still have a very, very full sound. A great example is when they cover one of Maiden's hits from Somewhere in Time.
Funny enough, Wasted Years is on that record, and that's the song that we cover a lot and has become kind of a fan favorite for Night Demon. when we decided to cover that, it was like I knew that song already. Easy.
If you want to hear the full track of Night Demon's version of Wasted Years, nightdemon.net/subscriber. Anyway, hearing these live clips, it kind of reminds me of something that I want to point out. Night Demon is similar to Maiden in that, as good as they are on an album, the intensity and just the showmanship of them on stage really drives home what a great band they are. On September 27th, 2019, Night Demon came to my town, and it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. I live as far east as you can get in North America. I mean, the next stop is Europe. You can't get any further east. It's a small town, you know. My whole province has, 500,000 people. It's almost the size of California. So the idea of Night Demon coming here wasn't something I ever thought would happen. I mean, you're talking almost 4,500 miles across the continent to come here from California. A local promoter, Justin Dean, put the show together. And when I found out about it, me and my buddy Josh were like, we couldn't believe it. Amazing show. They played at a place called the Rock House here. And they had Maiden Hell in the set list and Wasted Years. It was just an amazing show. They're just great live. And it kind of comes through in that Live Darkness album. But to see them on a stage in front of you, like, they just really blew us away. It's a cool thing about Night Demon. Like, we could talk all day about the effects and the vocal doubling, the production. But when you strip these songs down and you just hear three guys on stage ripping through them, you realize that underneath it all is just these really solid, well-written, kick-ass metal songs. I'll say it again. It's the thing about Night Demon. You can talk all day long about traditional metal and their influences. Underneath it all is some of the best written songs in modern metal. These crunchy riffs, killer hooks, super tight musicianship. It's one of those cases, like Maiden, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's a reason that when I had my Talking Maiden podcast, we had over 40 bands recommended to us by listeners, but only one of them became a new favorite. Right up there with Maiden, Priest, all my favorite bands. Man, I can't wait to dive into every aspect of this band. So that's episode number 1, Maiden Hell. We have a ton of content coming. Be sure to subscribe, tell all your friends, and head to nightdemon.net and become a subscriber. In the coming weeks, there's going to be a ton of bonus content in there. A members-only merch store with exclusive items and a members-only forum. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm super excited. I'm so glad that you guys are all on board. Until next week, this is Nesbit signing off.
Scream for me!
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Unbearable suspense that keeps you on the edge of an abyss of terror.
Take a cult film odyssey into Cinemadness with Cinematic Void. Based in Los Angeles, Cinematic Void is a film series that specializes in horror and exploitation films. Currently, we are hosting Cinematic Void Up All Night in the Cinemadness movie, a monthly virtual screening series, as well as the Cinematic Void podcast, where we dive deeper into the world of cult cinema. You can find Cinematic Void on the World Wide Web at cinematicvoid.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you like what we do, you can support Cinematic Void by joining our Patreon. Until next time, see you in the void.